Welcome to Sleep Shaper, your destination for expertly crafted sleep stories that help you fall asleep faster and deeper. I am Saiful, your host. I'm so glad you've chosen to join me tonight as we journey into the warmth and tranquility of a secluded mountain lodge. Tonight, we'll settle into the cozy embrace of this serene space, where the crackling fire dances softly in the hearth, and the peaceful stillness of the mountain evening surrounds us. Let the gentle rhythm of the flames and the soothing sounds of the night guide you into a state of relaxation, allowing the worries of the day to melt away. With every breath, feel yourself drawn into the calm, the warmth, and the peaceful glow of the fire. Take a slow, deep breath in, and as you exhale, feel the weight of the day melt away. Let go of any tension you may be holding, letting your body relax with each breath. With every inhale, fill your lungs with fresh, calming air, and with every exhale, release any stress, any lingering thoughts. Let the rhythm of your breath guide you into a peaceful state of relaxation. Imagine yourself seated by the fire, the warmth surrounding you like a gentle embrace. Feel the heat on your skin, soft and soothing, wrapping around you as the crackling of the fire fills the space. With each crackle, feel your body sink deeper into the comfort of the moment. The flames dance and flicker, their light casting soft shadows, creating a calming, hypnotic rhythm. The storm outside is far away, its howls fading into the background as the warmth of the fire grows. Each breath you take becomes slower, deeper, as the fire's gentle hum draws you further into relaxation. The scent of pine and burning wood fills the air, grounding you in the serenity of the lodge. You are safe here. The fire is your companion, offering warmth and peace, inviting you to rest. Feel your body settle into the comfort of the chair, your muscles softening with each breath. Allow the warmth to melt any remaining tension in your shoulders, your neck, your back. Let go of any weight you're carrying. The fire's gentle crackles guide your thoughts, helping you to release everything from the outside world. With every flicker of the flame, feel your mind slowing down, becoming lighter. The whispers of the fire, like a soft lullaby, fill the space with peace, allowing your thoughts to drift away like the flickering shadows on the wall. There is nothing you need to do right now, nothing to think about, just the warmth of the fire, the steady rhythm of the crackling logs, and the soft glow surrounding you. Imagine the warmth of the fire spreading throughout your body, filling you with calm. From the tips of your toes to the top of your head, let the warmth soothe and relax you. With each breath, you become more at ease, more deeply relaxed. The fire's gentle hum is all you need to focus on now. Let the warmth of the moment fill you completely, grounding you in peace and serenity. And, as you continue to relax, feel the fire's light filling you with a quiet sense of comfort. You are safe. You are at peace. Let your body soften into the calm rhythm of the fire, and with each crackle, let go of any remaining tension. With each breath, you grow deeper into relaxation until you feel weightless, floating in the warmth and stillness. The fire will keep you safe. It will keep you warm. As you continue to relax, allow the fire's gentle embrace to carry you softly into rest, knowing that everything is taken care of and all is well.
The snow fell softly, each flake a delicate, silent whisper against the darkening sky, blanketing the world in a hushed, pristine calm. Elena's footsteps broke the stillness as they crunched against the deep, snow-covered path, the sound of her boots sinking into the powdery white earth, a solitary rhythm in the frozen air. Each step carried the weight of her journey, long, tiring, and fraught with the expectations she had left behind. But now, as she drew closer to the mountain lodge, a feeling of relief began to unfurl in her chest, loosening the tight grip of her burdens. The air was crisp, sharp with the bite of winter, but pure. The scent of pine filled her lungs, fresh and earthy, mingling with the faint, woody scent of the distant firewood smoke that curled into the sky. It was the kind of air that seemed to clear the mind, to offer space to breathe deeply without the clutter of city noise or the hum of everyday life. Here, in this remote sanctuary, Elena felt the promise of solitude, a welcome balm for her weary soul. The lodge appeared like a dream in the distance, small but sturdy and welcoming, tucked into the heart of the snow-draped mountains. The soft glow of light streamed from the windows, spilling out like a warm invitation against the dark, cold backdrop. The wooden beams of the lodge, aged by the years, stood proud against the elements, but in their weathered strength, they seemed to embrace the quiet of the mountainside, as if they had always belonged here. Elena's heart settled as she approached the door. She pushed it open, and the welcoming heat of the fire inside rushed to meet her. The warmth, thick and comforting, wrapped around her like a familiar embrace, immediately chasing away the chill of the outside air. The scent of burning wood, rich and earthy with a hint of pine, permeated the air, a scent she hadn't realized she missed until now. It was a smell that spoke of hearths, of home, of safety. She stepped into the cozy space, the door closing behind her with a soft thud. The flames in the fireplace crackled merrily, their golden hues dancing and flickering in a lively rhythm. Shadows stretched and swayed along the walls, their soft movements in harmony with the warmth of the fire. The air was filled with a comforting, crackling sound, the logs shifting, the flames licking at the logs, each pop and crack a reminder of the night's quiet pulse. Elena exhaled, a deep, slow breath, feeling the tension leave her shoulders as she sank into a large armchair next to the fire. The soft fabric of the chair embraced her, and as she settled deeper into it, she could feel the weight of her journey slowly melting away, piece by piece. The storm outside raged, the wind howling like a distant animal prowling in the dark. But within the lodge there was only warmth, quiet, and the steady rhythm of the fire. The soft creak of the old wooden beams settling into place blended seamlessly with the fire's crackling, a gentle lullaby to her weary mind. The fire's warmth seeped deep into her bones, and with each passing minute, she felt herself unwinding. The flickering shadows played along the walls, flickers of soft light stretching across the room like the delicate brushstrokes of a painter. The crackling logs, their burning scent filling the air, offered her an unexpected peace, as if each pop and crack was a reassuring sigh, a promise that here, in this moment, she could find rest. The world outside, with its storm and its endless demands, seemed miles away, insignificant in the warmth of the lodge's embrace. Elena let her eyes flutter closed for a brief moment, allowing the gentle hum of the fire and the steady rhythm of the storm outside to lull her deeper into relaxation. Her mind, normally scattered with the pressures of her life, now felt soft and fluid, as if the weight of the world had been momentarily lifted. For the first time in what felt like years, Elena allowed herself to simply exist. There were no calls to answer, no responsibilities looming over her head. In the warmth of the firelight, surrounded by the stillness of the mountains, she was simply here. As the night deepened, the soft glow of the fire continued to cast its warm embrace over the lodge. The storm outside raged with more intensity now, the wind howling against the lodge's thick walls like a chorus of unseen voices. The rhythm of the fire's crackling and popping remained steady, its warmth reaching into the very marrow of Elena's bones, urging her to relax, to let go. She leaned back into the plush armchair, her body heavy with comfort, her eyes half closed, as the weariness of the day melted away. But just as she was on the verge of drifting into a peaceful sleep, a shift in the air caught her attention. The steady rhythm of the fire seemed to falter, the flames flickering more erratically, casting long, dancing shadows along the walls. A subtle unease settled in the pit of her stomach, the first tinge of discomfort she had felt since entering the lodge. It wasn't the wind, it wasn't the storm, it was something else, something within the very fabric of the lodge itself. Her fingers instinctively tightened around the edges of her blanket, as if bracing for something unseen. The warmth of the fire now felt strangely hollow, its comfort suddenly distant, as if the room itself was holding its breath. The once constant whisper of the wind outside began to fade, replaced by something more insistent, something faint but unmistakable. Whispers, soft and barely audible, like a voice in the next room, or perhaps from somewhere even deeper within the lodge. Elena sat up, her eyes darting around the room. She listened, trying to pinpoint the source of the sound, but all she could hear was the crackling of the fire, the murmur of the wind, and, yes, the whispers. They came in waves, almost like voices overlapping each other, too distant to make out, yet persistent enough to cause a shiver to run down her spine. Her heart quickened, the air around her growing dense with an energy she couldn't understand. The fire popped loudly, causing her to flinch, and she glanced toward the window. Snow was falling faster now, and the dark silhouettes of trees swayed under the force of the storm. The lodge, though warm and inviting, suddenly felt vast and a little too quiet. It felt as if something, or someone, was waiting. Before she could fully comprehend what was happening, the sound of the door creaking open echoed through the room. Elena froze. No one was supposed to be here. The storm had kept her completely isolated. She didn't expect visitors, and yet here was the unmistakable sound of the door moving on its old hinges. A figure stepped into the room, the door closing, behind them with a soft thud. Elena's breath caught as she saw the cloaked stranger enter, their silhouette barely visible against the flickering light of the fire. He moved slowly, deliberately, his steps light on the wooden floor, but his presence filled the room as if he had always belonged there. The soft sway of his cloak whispered with each movement, and though his face remained hidden beneath the hood, Eleanor felt an undeniable pull to him, as though she had met him before, or perhaps always known him. The man paused before the fire, his gaze seemingly fixed on the dancing flames. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind outside howled in the distance, but within the lodge all that could be heard was the steady crackle of the fire and the strange, unsettling stillness between them. The shadows of the room shifted unnaturally, stretching as if to reach out toward him. Finally, he spoke, his voice as smooth as the wind, but carrying a weight that filled the room. "I've been waiting for you, Elena." The words were soft but clear, and they seemed to echo through the room, reverberating off the wooden walls. Elena's heart skipped a beat. How did he know her name? She hadn't told anyone where she was going. This was her sanctuary, her escape from the world, yet here he stood, in the heart of her solitude, as though he had been waiting for her arrival all along. She swallowed hard, the weight of his gaze, a gaze that she could feel despite his hooded face, making the warmth of the fire feel strangely distant. Her body tensed, but she refused to show her unease. She had sought peace here, and this man, this stranger, was disrupting that peace. "How do you know my name?" Eleanor asked, her voice steadier than she felt. The man stepped closer to the fire, the flickering light illuminating his face for the first time. His features were sharp, but not harsh. His eyes, however, were the strangest thing. They glinted with a knowingness that seemed far older than his appearance. Something ancient and hidden. They were eyes that had seen too much and yet not enough. They looked into her, through her, and in them Eleanor saw echoes of something she couldn't place. "I know things about you," he said, his voice lowering to a near whisper. "Things you've long buried. Things you don't remember." The words struck her like a cold gust of wind. She took a step back, her pulse quickening as confusion swirled with fear. What did he mean? What could he possibly know about her past? Her life had been simple, quiet, uneventful. Hadn't it? The fire crackled louder, as if adding emphasis to the growing tension. The man remained motionless, his presence filling the room. The temperature seemed to drop slightly despite the warmth of the fire, and the air between them felt charged, as if the walls of the lodge were closing in. Elena couldn't help but glance toward the window, where the storm raged on, its fury untouched by the quiet intensity of the moment. "What do you want?" Elena asked, her voice barely a whisper. He didn't answer immediately, only tilted his head slightly, his gaze still locked onto hers. The fire popped again, sending a shower of sparks into the air. He finally spoke, his words slow and deliberate. "The fire remembers what we forget, Eleanor. The fire knows everything. It remembers everything." His cryptic words hung in the air, thick and heavy as the wind outside howled louder than before. The fire crackled in response, its flames dancing erratically as if alive. Eleanor felt a chill run through her, not from the cold, but from the way the fire seemed to pulse with an energy of its own. She didn't know what to make of this strange man or the unease that now gripped her. What did he mean by the fire remembering? And why had he appeared now, in this isolated lodge, just as she had begun to let her guard down? She wanted answers, but the deeper she looked into his eyes, the more she felt herself being pulled into something larger, something beyond her understanding. The storm outside intensified through the night, its violent winds howling through the trees, like an ancient creature stirring from the depths. The snow fell faster, swirling in frenzied gusts against the windows, the mountain seemingly swallowed whole by the wild weather. But inside the lodge, the air had become still, save for the steady crackle of the fire that now seemed to grow warmer, fiercer, as if responding to the unspoken tension in the room. Elena lay in her bed, the thick, woolen blankets heavy on her chest, but sleep eluded her. The fire, though comforting at first, now seemed to hum with an unsettling energy, its flames dancing wildly in a chaotic rhythm that matched the storm outside. Each crackling snap sent a shiver through her, and though the warmth was still there, it felt more intense, almost suffocating. She rose, her feet silent on the floorboards, and moved to the fire, as though drawn by an invisible force. The shadows, cast by the flames, stretched long across the room, distorting the familiar corners into unfamiliar shapes. The firelight flickered with an almost unnatural energy, casting shadows that seemed to move, twisting and shifting as if the lodge itself were breathing. Elena stood there for a long time, watching the fire, the warmth of the room no longer a comfort, but a pressure that she couldn't shake. She could hear the wind crashing against the walls of the lodge, its cries louder now, but there was something in the way the shadows stretched across the room, something that felt off. Her footsteps echoed through the hall as she wandered through the lodge. The wooden beams above groaned, as if shifting under the weight of a century of stories and memories. The floorboards creaked beneath her, each step magnified in the silence, yet somehow the echoes felt hollow, as though the lodge itself were listening to her, watching her every movement. She turned the corner into the hallway, her hand brushing against the smooth wood of the walls, but something was different now. The hallway, which had always been a narrow, familiar stretch, now seemed longer, the walls closing in. Or was it the other way around? The sense of space around her began to feel distorted, stretching and narrowing in ways that didn't make sense. She paused, a strange feeling stirring deep within her, as if the very air around her had shifted, holding its breath. The echoes of her footsteps seemed to come from further down the hall, as if they were repeating themselves in some strange, looping rhythm. The hair on the back of her neck prickled. She had to get out of the hallway. Turning on her heel, she retraced her steps, but when she reached the living room, she stopped short. There, just beyond the doorway, a door stood that she was certain hadn't been there before. A dark wooden door with ornate carvings on the frame, though it seemed oddly familiar, as if it had always been a part of the lodge, hidden just out of view. Her breath caught, her heart thudding louder in her chest. The door was old, its wood darkened with age and wear, but it looked untouched, pristine in its quiet solitude. Elena stood frozen for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the door. A chill ran through her, the shadows of the room now feeling thicker, more oppressive. The firelight flickered violently, casting sharp, angular shadows across the room, as if the lodge was caught in the grip of an unseen force. With hesitant steps, Eleanor approached the door, her fingers trembling slightly as she reached for the cold brass handle. The moment her fingers touched it, a sudden wave of coldness surged through her, running from her hand up her arm, a chill that seemed to pull at her very soul. She hesitated, but curiosity, something deeper, something primal, drove her forward. The door creaked open slowly, its hinges groaning as though they hadn't been disturbed in years. On the other side was a room unlike any she had seen in the lodge before. The air was thick with dust, the furniture draped in sheets, and the walls lined with old portraits, paintings of faces she didn't recognize. But what struck her most was the feeling of abandonment, the sense that this room had been forgotten, locked away for years, untouched by time. The air was still, almost too still, and it felt as though the room was holding its breath, waiting for her. Elena stepped inside, her boots muffled against the thick carpet that lay beneath her feet. As she walked deeper into the room, the temperature seemed to drop, the warmth of the fire outside the room failing to reach her. The silence here was suffocating, broken only by the faint, distant sound of wind rattling the windows. She approached the far wall where an old fireplace sat, cold and unused, its hearth filled with ash. The flickering shadows of the fire outside seemed to dance across the room, but no matter how much she moved, the shadows remained unnervingly still, as if anchored to the walls. Elena's fingers brushed against one of the portraits. An old woman, her eyes dark and filled with secrets, and she felt a cold shiver pass over her. The painting seemed to follow her as she moved, its eyes unblinking, its stare unnervingly focused on her every movement. She quickly pulled her hand back, her pulse quickening. The fire in the living room crackled louder now, but the air in the room had grown cold and still. It felt as though the entire lodge was holding its breath. Suddenly, Elena heard it again. Whispers. Soft, like a breeze, but unmistakable, curling through the silence. She froze, her eyes darting around the room, but there was nothing. Just the dark portraits and the lingering chill. Her chest tightened. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, as if coming from the very walls themselves. You can't hide from it, Eleanor. The lodge remembers. The voice was deep, like a growl in the back of her mind. The room began to shift again. The floor creaked beneath her, the walls groaned, and the shadows seemed to move toward her, closing in. Her heart pounded as she turned to leave, but the door she had entered through was no longer visible. The hallway had disappeared. The door had vanished, leaving only the cold, empty room. And in that room, the fire continued to burn, its warmth no longer inviting, but a constant reminder of the mystery that lay just beyond her understanding. The storm outside raged on with unrelenting fury, its howls and shrieks vibrating through the lodge like the cries of some ancient, restless spirit. The wind clawed at the windows, sending small bursts of cold air through the gaps in the old wood. But inside, the fire burned brighter than ever, its crackling warmth offering a strange sense of comfort as it cast its orange glow across the room. Elena had retreated back to her armchair by the hearth, her body exhausted, her mind swirling with questions she couldn't answer. She had barely slept the night before, the images of the strange door and the shifting hallways still fresh in her mind. The fire, which had once been a source of peace, now seemed to hum with an unsettling energy, as though it were pulling at something deep within her, something buried, something she was afraid to confront. She stared into the flames, watching as they danced and flickered in an erratic rhythm. Each crackle, each pop of the wood seemed to reach into her, tugging at the edges of her memory. The warmth of the fire was still there, but now it felt different, too intense, too consuming. Her thoughts drifted to the strange room she had discovered, the forgotten space that seemed to hold the weight of untold secrets. The portraits, the cold hearth, the whispers, they all felt connected to something she couldn't yet understand, something that seemed just out of reach. The air in the room seemed to thicken, the shadows around her stretching longer, as if the fire itself was warping reality. She could feel her pulse quicken as the temperature in the room rose, the heat of the flames pressing in on her, suffocating her. She leaned forward slightly, trying to find comfort in the warmth, but instead her eyes were drawn deeper into the fire. And then it happened. The flames shifted, curling in on themselves like tendrils reaching for her. The warm light flickered, distorted, and for a brief moment she saw something in the fire, an image flickering in and out of focus. It was a child, a girl. It was her. Elena blinked and rubbed her eyes, but the image didn't go away. The girl in the flames looked up at her, her face filled with a joy that Elena hadn't seen in years. The familiar yet long-forgotten face of her younger self smiled back at her from the fire. The moment was fleeting, but it was enough. It was enough to stir something deep inside her, a feeling she had long buried. Her breath caught in her throat as the fire crackled louder, the flames swirling faster now, becoming more chaotic, almost desperate. The shadows on the walls grew, darker, more ominous, and Eleanor's heart began to race. She could hear the distant whispering again, louder now, as if the voices were calling to her from the depths of the flames. "You remember, Eleanor. You've always remembered." The words seemed to echo from the fire itself, their soft, melodic tone pulling her deeper into the trance-like state that the fire had created. She wanted to look away, to step back, but her body refused to move. It was as though she were bound to the flames, drawn into the images they held. The flames shifted again, and this time the scene was different. She saw a house, her childhood home. The walls were warm, the rooms filled with laughter, a sense of belonging that Elena hadn't realized she had lost. She was standing in the living room, holding the hand of a woman, her mother. The woman was smiling, but there was a sadness in her eyes, a sadness that Elena had never truly understood until now. The fire flickered, and in an instant, the image changed. The house was gone. The scene was consumed by fire. Eleanor's childhood home burned before her eyes, the flames licking at the walls, curling through the rooms, swallowing everything whole. She saw her mother standing outside, her face filled with fear, her arms reaching for Eleanor. The heat of the flames seemed to sear through the room, the crackling sound echoing in her ears. The smell of smoke filled the air, burning her lungs as the fire tore through the house, erasing everything. Elena gasped, her chest tight, her heart pounding in her ears. She turned away from the fire, unable to bear the image of her past playing out in front of her. But the fire pulled her back. The flames seemed to burn brighter, hotter, and the whispers returned, louder this time, like a chorus of voices calling her name. It wasn't just the fire, Elena. The fire is the keeper of your memories. You can't escape it. The words echoed, reverberating in her mind. She gasped for breath, her heart racing. The warmth of the fire had become suffocating, pressing in on her like a vice. She could feel the air around her shift, the temperature rising with each passing second. The fire was no longer just an observer of her memories. It had become a part of them, a keeper of the past, a keeper of the pain. Her body trembled, but she couldn't look away. The fire had revealed the truth. The fire had always been connected to her past, to the tragedy she had never truly understood, to the pain she had buried deep inside. She had tried to escape it, tried to outrun it, but it had always been there, waiting for her to face it. The flames began to die down slowly, their chaotic dance becoming gentler, more serene, as if the fire had given her what it could. And now it was ready to let go. The room grew quiet, the whispers fading, leaving only the soft crackling of the dying embers. Elena stood frozen, her chest heaving with the weight of the revelation. The fire was no longer a comfort, but a mirror that reflected her past, the pain, the loss, and the truth she had long denied. And now the fire had shown her everything. The storm outside had quieted to a distant murmur, but inside the lodge the fire burned brighter than ever, its flames reaching higher, casting long, shifting shadows across the room. Eleanor stood before it, her heart heavy with the weight of the truth it had revealed. The warmth of the fire, which had once been a sanctuary, now felt like an overwhelming force. The crackling flames seemed to hum with a rhythm that resonated deep within her, vibrating through her very bones. The fire was alive, pulsating with memories she had long buried and tried to forget. Her breath was shallow, her mind racing as she tried to process the images that had flooded her in the last few hours. Her mother's face, the burning house, the pain and confusion of her past, they were all laid bare in the flickering flames. The fire had not only illuminated the darkest corners of her memories, but had also forced her to confront them, unwillingly pulling her back to a time she had desperately tried to escape. She stepped closer to the hearth, the warmth of the flames, now suffocating as though the very fire she had sought for comfort had become a reminder of everything she had lost. The whispering had stopped, leaving only the steady, rhythmic crackle of the fire behind, but its presence was heavier now. The fire seemed to know her secrets, know her fears, and above all, know her deepest regrets. A soft breeze stirred the air, carrying the scent of smoke, and for a moment, Eleanor thought she saw the shape of the man, the cloaked figure, standing in the shadows, watching her. But when she blinked, the shape was gone. He had not spoken since the night he had first arrived, but Elena felt his presence still lingering, as if he were waiting for her to make her choice. She couldn't explain it, but she knew, she felt it, that the decision was hers alone to make. The lodge, the fire, the storm, it all seemed to draw her into a single moment, a moment that stretched out, heavy with anticipation. The fire's warmth was no longer a sanctuary. It was a force that demanded her attention, forcing her to confront what she had long kept hidden. The walls of the lodge seemed to close in around her, the floor creaking under the weight of time, as if the building itself were holding its breath, waiting for her to decide. Her heart pounded in her chest, the sound of her own breath now the loudest thing in the room. The memories of her past, the house burning, her mother's face, the warmth of her childhood home, tugged at her, pulling her deeper into the fire's grip. The flames flickered wildly, as if urging her forward, but a cold fear gripped her heart. Could she face it? Could she truly confront the past she had spent years trying to bury? The fire crackled louder now, its intensity rising as the moment of decision drew near. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she reached out toward the flames, the heat wrapping around her fingers, like a gentle, persistent force. The warmth, once comforting, now felt like a beckoning, urging her to let go of the fear, to release the weight of her past, to face the memories she had long kept hidden. For a long moment, Eleanor stood still, her gaze fixed on the flames, her mind swirling with the echoes of the past. She could hear the whispers again, faint but clear, as if the fire itself was speaking to her. You cannot escape Elena. You never could. But you can choose to let go. The fire holds the truth, and it will show you what you need to see. Her body shook, but it was no longer from fear. It was from the realization that she was not alone in this moment. The fire, the lodge, the man, they were all part of this journey. And it was time to make a choice. She closed her eyes, her breath steadying, and with a slow, deliberate motion, she stepped closer to the fire. The warmth enveloped her, pulling her in, and as she reached out, her hand hovering just above the flames, she felt something shift inside her. The fire, which had once seemed to hold her in a tight grip, now felt like an invitation. The warmth of the flames no longer suffocated her. It freed her. With a final deep breath, Eleanor reached into the fire, feeling its heat curl around her fingers. She felt the weight of her past, the pain, the fear, the loss, dissipate into the air. The flames seemed to pulse with energy, transforming her memories, burning away the anguish, the regret. As she allowed herself to release the pain, the fire burned brighter, its crackling sound rising into a steady hum, like a lullaby that soothed her soul. The warmth spread through her body, radiating out from her hand into every corner of her being. The lodge, the shadows, the whispers, all of it seemed to fall away as the fire consumed the past, leaving only peace in its wake. The storm outside had finally ceased, the wind's howls fading into silence, as if the world itself had exhaled, releasing the tension it had held for so long. Elena stood there for a long while, her eyes closed, her hand still hovering above the fire. She didn't know how long it had been, but when she finally opened her eyes, the room was still. The fire had calmed, the flames now soft and steady, casting a warm, gentle glow across the room. The lodge felt lighter, freer, as if it too had been freed from the burden of the past. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight in her chest lift. The fire had given her something she hadn't known she needed, the chance to let go, to forgive herself, to face the past and find peace with it. The man had not returned, but his presence lingered in the stillness of the room, a silent witness to her journey. Elena's heart was lighter now, her mind clearer. The fire had shown her the truth, but it had also given her the strength to move forward, to step into the future without the shadow of the past hanging over her. As the fire burned softly in the hearth, Elena stepped back from the flames, her soul at peace, her heart full. She had made her choice, and for the first time in years, she felt truly free.